Well, hello friends, and welcome to another Ask Zach. Today we are going to compare a 1960 Tweed Deluxe to a 1959 Tweed Harvard. Both classic Fender amps from the same late 50s era with very, they're similar yet different. They have differences in speaker size, different in cabinet size, difference in the type of power tube biasing, whether it's cathode on the Deluxe or fixed on the Harvard. They have some really interesting differences. So we're going to talk about that, where they kind of placed in the Fender lineup from the lowly Champ all the way up to the Tweed Twin. And, I'm going to play them, and I'm going to play them, cranked up. I'm going to play them clean. I'm going to play them everywhere in between, using my 57 Esquire with an added vintage mid-50s neck pickup and no pedals underfoot, just a A-B switch. And that's going to be it. So if you've been enjoying the show and you haven't subscribed yet, well, please go down in the corner. If you've already subscribed, then I really appreciate you supporting the show. And there's many different ways. There's tip jar information in the description, or you can go to askzach.com. You could check out some merch like this amp diagram shirt, or you can become a friend of Ask Zach, which is a way to support the channel on a monthly basis. Also, I really appreciate it if you'll hit like if you enjoy the video, because that really helps the YouTube algorithm and helps other people learn about the show. So thanks. All right, let's dive in. I guess let's start with the, kind of the amp lineup of the late 50s. So the bottom of the rung amp was the Champ, and it had, had a little 6 or 8 inch speaker, and it had just a single output tube and just a volume knob. Okay, then the step up from that was the Princeton. The Princeton had had an 8 inch speaker, and it had the addition of a tone control, but it was still a single output tube, basically nearly the same amp, but of course Princeton had a bigger cab. Then you get the big jump from the Princeton to the Harvard. Now, do you get the names because they were student model amps, Princeton, Harvard, and the fact that they made the Harvard the better amp? I thought that was interesting. So the Harvard was the first amp in the lineup going from bottom to top that had 2 output tubes. So this has 2 6V6s in it. And what that does, of course, it allows it to have more wattage. It also gives it a wider sound and a little bit more, single-ended amp, or amps with only 1 output tube just tend to be a little bit more lo-fi sounding. So the Harvard was the first, step up into the double output tube. And then once you got above the Harvard, that was the Vibrolux. And the Vibrolux was basically the same amp as a Harvard, except it had the addition of a tremolo. And that made it necessary for it to have 1 tube difference. This has a really strange, first position preamp tube that is a 6AT6. And it's basically half of a 12AX7. And then on the Vibrolux, they had to use a 12AX7 or 12AY7, and they had to use that so that they had the other half to operate the tremolo. So also the Vibrolux had a bigger cab. Okay, but still basically same amp, same sound to a degree. Then you jump up from the Vibrolux to this amp to the Deluxe. So of course you get a bigger cab, you get a little more power. Even though these amps have the same iron in them, they have the same output transformer and such, but I guess they put a little more juice to the tubes and such in the Deluxe, and so you get a little more power, and you also get the addition of a second volume control because it has 2 channels. So it has a mic channel and it has an instrument channel. So it has a volume control for each and a overall master tone control, while the Harvard has 3 inputs, but they're all to the same channel, and they're just padded as you go from 1 to 3. So 1 is full gain, 2 is padded some, and 3 is padded more, and then it just has a volume and tone control. So of course you have the difference in cab size. Deluxe is bigger. You have a difference in speaker. The Harvard has a P10R Jensen, and the Deluxe had the P12R. So you have a 12-inch speaker, but still very low wattage. Probably one of the biggest differences in the sound is actually the way that the tubes are, the power tubes are biased, and that the Tweed Deluxe is cathode biased, and the Harvard is fixed bias. What that does tone-wise is cathode bias will tend to go into overdrive a little quicker and a little smoother. Also, it will tend to be more compressed, and it will tend to be a little looser in the bass. Of course, the opposite is true for fixed bias. It will be a little more abrupt as it goes into overdrive, into distortion. It will have tighter bass, and it will be more percussive and less compressed. So that's kind of the lineup. So then I guess if you were to continue on up the lineup from the Deluxe would be the Tremolux. And the Tremolux had, especially the late 50s Tremolux, was a really cool amp. It had a big box, much bigger than this. It still had the 12-inch speaker and had tremolo, and it was fixed bias instead of cathode biased, and it's really a neat amp. And then, from there you go up to like the 210 Super, which is a monster of an amp. And then you get into what most guys would see, what would have been seen as the professional amps, the actual gigging amps, which would be like the Pro with a single 15, the 310 Bandmaster, or the 410 Bassman, or the top of the heap, which was the high-powered Tweed Twin of 59 and 60. So that was kind of the Fender lineup of amps, and so I thought it was neat to have these two that are kind of close in the lineup. There's only, like I said, the only amp that's kind of between these is the Vibrolux, which is the same amp as the Harvard, except it has tremolo on it. It's always confusing how Fender used the word vibrato when they were actually talking about tremolo, but that's another story. So here, let's just hear it. So I think we'll start with the Harvard, and we'll just kind of go back and forth, play like some neck pickup stuff and some bridge pickup stuff, and then I will start turning the amps up. So right now they're set at 5 or below, and I think the Deluxe is set at 4 with the tone about 6 o'clock, or no, at 6. And the Harvard, I think the volume's around 5, and the tone looks like it's around 5 or so. So let's hear it. We're going to hear the Harvard first on the neck pickup on the old Esquire. Okay, so just from playing that big E chord, you can hear, the beginning of the difference. How this amp has a wider frequency range, and it's a little more open in the mid-range. And the Harvard over there has, it's tighter. It's not as wide frequency range-wise, and it's more focused sounding. So, of course, the Harvard is most famous for being, the amp that Steve Cropper used on all the early Stax stuff. And, of course, later on he switched to Super Reverb. But that's most of the Stax stuff pre-66 is the Harvard. The Tweed Deluxe has, because it was a much more popular amp and there were many more sold, the Tweed Deluxe has, so many users, whether it's, Larry Carlton on Steely Dan stuff, or, the Eagles like Joe Walsh and Don Felder using them, famously on, on Eagles stuff, and all sorts of things in between. These are both, really classic amps. I think also Ace Frehley apparently used a Harvard a bunch on Kiss stuff. So I thought that was interesting. So yeah, because a Les Paul into that Harvard, which when I interviewed Greg Martin, he used my Harvard, and he had his real 58 Sunburst that he played on that True Tone Lounge that I did, and that was a lot of fun. All right, let's go to the bridge pickup. We're still, let's see, this is the Deluxe first. I landed on the Harvard, and again, you know, I was playing repetitive stuff just and going back and forth so you could hear open mid-range, you know, wider frequency range, and then the more focused sound. I mean, both amps are great, but frankly, I hear more people talk about how the Harvard, you know, really does well in the studio because it is a smaller sound. So, all right, let's crank it up some so you can hear, you know, what these things sound like distorted. So let's turn this up to like 9. We're gonna, set this up to about 10. Okay, so now you're gonna hear how the amps overdrive. And we're starting with the Harvard, and you're gonna hear the, just the way that they'll compress and the way they'll act when cranked up. Let's see. Very, still in the same family. They're brothers, but they're very different. Let's see. That was a Harvard. Let's turn this up a little bit more. Make it a little more fair. So now we've got the Deluxe on 10. I think the Harvard was a little louder. Harvard now. All right, I think both really cool amps. Both, they have different, kind of strengths and weaknesses. I will say that at the end of the day, as much as I appreciate the Deluxe, I like the Harvard a little bit more because it tends to stay a little tighter in the bass. The Deluxe. Let's see which I'm going to switch to now. I don't know. Yeah, they're both really cool. They're both really, really great amps. But yeah, you're hearing the difference between cathode biased and fixed bias. You're hearing the difference between a bigger cab versus a smaller cab, a P12R versus a P10R, and but both really cool amps and both really fun vintage amps. I have to say something. So this Deluxe I borrowed from Dan Strain, and I brought it to the house here, and I compared it against my Harvard, and I thought my Harvard sounded terrible. So then I remembered that a couple months ago that this company called Audio Tubes Direct, they said, hey, we really want to support the show. And this was, before I'd really set up much. And they said, can we send you some tubes for one of your amps? And I said, yeah, I would love some new tubes, for my Harvard. So they gave me all the tubes except for the 6AT6, which of course they don't make. So I just found one off of eBay, but they gave me a pair of 6V6s, which I like the tongue saw reissues. So they gave me a pair of these and a Mullard reissue, preamp tube. And then I think it's a Sovtech 5Y3 rectifier. And I put all those in the amp, and I had some old, RCA tubes in it. And wow, it really woke up the amp. And because I was about to not do this video because, frankly, my Harvard, it sounded so bad that I was about ready to, start talking to Dan and say, hey, can I sell one of my children to get your Tweed Deluxe from you? But so thank you to Audio Tubes Direct for the tubes for supporting the show that way. That made a big difference. It made this video possible. So thanks to those guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, and because again, even I don't get that many times where I can compare, two, vintage amps that are, from the same, just a year apart and such. So it was really fun for me, and I hope it was for you too. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.